Hey, good afternoon to you. 506 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We're making sense of the news. Coming up, Mark Hemingway will be here from the Federalist. We'll talk to him about the media's latest lies to fall apart. That just keeps happening. Why don't we trust them? And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Get a load of this Associated Press headline and lead. Headline, the Supreme Court weakens federal regulators, overturning decades-old Chevron decision. Lead, Dateline Washington, the Supreme Court on Friday upended a 40-year-old decision that made it easier for the federal government to regulate the environment, public health, workplace safety, and consumer protections, delivering a far-reaching and potentially lucrative victory to business interests. Wow, that sounds awful. I can't believe the Supreme Court did this. For more on what the Supreme Court actually did, let's not turn to the Associated Press, but instead to John Vecchione. He's a senior litigation counsel for the new Civil Liberties Alliance, and he joins us on the phone. John, good to have you with us, sir.
Yeah, I have to use my Ron Howard voice. That's not what the Supreme Court did.
It's crazy. I'm looking at this going, oh, that sounds terrible. What really happened last week?
So in Loper Bright versus Raimondo, and my case, where I'm counsel of record for the plaintiffs in Relentless v. Commerce, the court got rid of the Chevron doctrine, which said that when you are in litigation with an agency, and you're a person in litigation with an agency, if the statute is unclear and the agency asserts that its regulation is lawful or asserts what the statute allows them to do, if it's a reasonable interpretation, not the best interpretation, but one that's reasonable, the court has to defer to the agency's view of the law. So anytime you're in litigation with an agency and the law is unclear, they just put their thumb on the scale, and in most cases, you would lose.
Yeah, it's crazy. But this has been the way the federal government has operated now for decades. They just make up what they think the law says, and then the rest of us have to live with it.
Certainly, yes, since 1984. So it died just past its 40th birthday.
And it couldn't come soon enough. This is something, Chevron doctrine is the kind of thing you would hear in conservative circles in Washington. But the impact here, do we know how far-reaching it'll be? I have a feeling it's going to affect a lot of federal agency work because they've been doing this for, as you point out, 40 years.
So I think it will have three sort of macro effects, big effects on how people act because of their expectations.
Yeah.
I think if they want their regulations to stick, instead of thinking, what do we want to do and how do we show that this statute is ambiguous so we can do it, they will be thinking, what does the statute say and does it allow us to do that? So there's a lot of good effects will happen when we never see them, because that's how they'll have to be thinking if they want the regulation to stick. Secondly, Congress, the Democrats and the Republicans can't say, oh, you know what? I don't really know what we think about this, but we'll put it in. We'll make a vague statute, and then when the president is of my party, I'll win, and when the president is your party, he'll change it for you, so we get the best of both worlds. No, they're going to have to put in what the law means because the courts are not going to let the agencies just dictate what the law is when Congress has tried to avoid its responsibility. So that's another good effect. And finally, all of these regulations that are put in that are actually against the statute, the courts will be able to look at that without putting their thumbs on the scale, and you're going to see a number of regulations that don't meet the statute be struck down. And then the agencies can go back to Congress, where they have to go before Congress every year for appropriations and everything else. It doesn't hurt them to ask Congress for what authority they actually think they need.
Yeah. I don't know how closely you're following, for instance, like the Title IX interpretation that the Biden administration has rolled out lately.
We put in a comment. I'm with the new Civil Liberties Alliance, and we put in a comment about it. Yes, we know it well.
So this is okay. So this is a good example of an area where I wonder what's going to happen next, because the Biden administration is insisting that the words man and woman, male and female, don't really mean anything, and that, in fact, men can be women based on their interpretation of Title IX. And my impression is that, well, actually, Title IX is crystal clear that they're delineating based on sex and that men should not be in women's spaces and that women should be given equal opportunities. To what extent does this involve a Chevron component?
Well, it takes away an argument for the government, right? The government now has to, and the Department of Education has to rise or fall on what Title IX actually says.
Right.
They can't say, which, I don't like the argument that the word man and the word woman have no fixed meaning, and that therefore it's ambiguous and therefore they get to do this. I never liked that argument, but they don't get to do it now anyway. So it does take away one bullet in their gun.
That's a big deal. You mentioned that Congress has essentially abdicated its responsibility for years to write clear laws in order to, well, I guess the question is why? Why have members of Congress not written clear laws, and why have they given so much power away to the executive branch to make it up?
I'll give you an example, because somebody's going to complain. When the Obamacare got put in, right? Mm-hmm. The pro-life Democrats and the pro-choice Democrats, there were pro-life Democrats in those days, they all were arguing over this one area, and they didn't want to say explicitly whether funding was allowed for abortion or not. So they said to one side, to the pro-life side, oh, it won't be allowed. And they said to the pro-choice side, oh, it will be allowed. Well, nobody found out. They didn't want to vote on that and cause a disruption. They didn't want to vote on that for a hard vote for some people in certain areas. So they let it go. And then in one administration, it's one thing. In another administration, it's another. Now they can't just count on their friend in the presidency or in the administrative agencies putting the law the way they want without telling the people that they're the ones who did that.
That's a huge deal. And that will have the effect of slowing down bad legislation, I think, meaningfully, because if there's clear language within that legislation, there will be constituencies who have something to say about it.
And you'll have to write it clearly so people know what you mean. You can't wait to pass the bill to find out what's in it if they want it to be upheld.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to have very far-reaching consequences if all of the levels of our government respect this Supreme Court ruling. What do you think the likeliness is that it will be respected by the courts, the agencies, and Congress?
I believe some agencies, depending on who they are, it's the split in the human condition. So I can't tell you. Some people just want to make a splash, and they'll make a regulation. They don't care if it's ever filled out. They don't care if it ever actually comes to fruition. So they'll just do what they've been doing, and it'll get struck down later on, or have more of a chance to be struck down. Other people, as I said, I'd say the smarter bureaucrat will say, okay, now we got to actually go read the statute and show why this is the best meaning of the statute. And it gives them incentive, if they want their regulation to hold up, to do that. So I think that's all the incentives of this decision push towards better governance. Do I know that people will actually do it, that Congress will actually write things clearly, and that the bureaucrats won't just put in regulations they expect to fall but that make a big splash? I don't, but the incentives are right.
Will this produce a cascade of further lawsuits to clarify what so many people have been dealing with these federal agencies?
Well, there's two other cases that your listeners should know about, Vince, and that is Corner Post came out today, which said the statute of limitations to attack regulations was always 6 years, and the government said that meant 6 years from the regulation. But Corner Post says, no, it's from when you are injured by the regulation. So that'll give some people more time to attack certain regulations that affected them badly. That the courts will then have to look at those regulations without putting a thumb on the scale for the government because of our case, because of Loper, Bright, and Relentless. And then if an ALJ is trying to take your money or do something like that because of jarcossy, you've got to get a jury. So all three of these cases are going to incentivize rational government rather than arbitrary and capricious government by the agencies. It's been a very, very good week for American liberty in administrative law.
Yeah, and it restores the proper order of things. The Congress is supposed to come up with the actual legislation, not outsource it to the agencies. Finally, in terms of your view of Washington and the way things operate, like my understanding is now there's a lot of special interests who really get involved at the agencies to try and promulgate these regulations. They're going to have to more directly target lawmakers now as a result of this. Is that right?
Yeah, although I always say special interest is the guy who has an interest opposite yours. Sure. So what they will absolutely have to do is not do what I said, not say, oh, let's just put it in this vague language and then we'll work on it later within the bureaucracy. They're going to have to get specific language too. They're not going to have to spend these millions of dollars lobbying and make a vague law that then gets them nothing. So I'll tell you this, it gives that, you point out something I hadn't thought of. For the lobbyists, they are now incentivized also to be clear about what they want and what the Congress is doing.
If this case produces government that's easier to understand, it's going to make America so much better. And it sounds like it is. Thank you very much. John Vecchione, really appreciate your time and your excellent work here. Congratulations, sir.
Love your show, Vince. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. John Vecchione, good to talk to him. He's with the new Civil Liberties Alliance, and that's a real historic achievement that he has here as they're able to wrest away the power of the out-of-control bureaucracy and restore it back to the people. That's a huge deal. It is just a massive deal, and really cool to see. All right, Donna's calling in from Frederick. She's on line 4. Donna, good afternoon. You are on the Vince Colonnese Show.
Hi, what a great interview that was. You know, I know people who were lobster fishermen in the Northeast. And way back when they started messing around with all these regulations, those guys were really put off. And even with the licenses, even in the state of New York to fish, it's insane. And I think the point is that we're going to start seeing, and the left hates this because the power is going back to the people. And on so many levels with so many things, you can even use like Bitcoin mining as an example. They were regulating them to death through the SEC. It's just unreal. And I think we're seeing a tide turn. The left is getting threatened. They know that everything with Biden is failing. I don't know if they'll trot out Michelle or Hillary. They're in the press a little bit now, so we're getting little glimmers of that. And I think you're right about the others, Newsom and
Whitmer.
The other one who, Whitmer.
Gretchen Whitmer,
I don't
yes.
think they're good. Yeah, I don't think they're going to make it past anything. The public's very well aware of all of this. So I think, going forward, we have to be mindful to that the left is going to get desperate. They're going to act out a bit. We may see a black swan event or, false flag kind of things. And we just need to be aware of our surroundings. We as people together have to just,
when you say,
just be awake.
Yeah. When you say false flag, do you mean like they tell us that a laptop that contains real information about the Biden family is actually a Russian disinformation campaign?
Well, and yeah, that's one element of it. The other could be like
that really happened. Yes.
Yeah, it did. And terrorist threats can be another false flag. I mean, look at what's going on with the insanity with the border. I feel like that's a ticking time bomb, and I hate to even use that verbiage, but I think it's important for us to just be aware of that going forward. I'm taking all the wins we can get right now, Vince.
Yeah.
But I'm also looking at things from the 40,000-foot view. Like we have to be stewards of our nature, of our nation. We have to protect ourselves.
Yeah, no question. And I will say, Donna, I wonder, or I have a question for you. I wonder to what extent you are appreciative this week of these decisions, and by extension, the role that Trump has played, actually. So Trump's decision to appoint these justices, and we can quibble over some of them. I mean, Amy Coney Barrett is definitely catching some side eye from me and a bunch of conservatives in these past few weeks. But as these decisions come out, the ones that do restore liberty to the people and rightly order the government back to the way the founders envisioned, it's just amazing that this deep into the awful Biden era, that you and I could look up and go, wow, that was something good that happened. And that is a credit to Donald Trump, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's what I mean by taking the wins. And as far as Amy Coney Barrett, I look at that from what I've heard on alternative media. Some of the pieces I've listened to and read are kind of saying, she's got a point. It doesn't mean you have to agree with her. And I think maybe that's the point. you know, there are different people with different opinions. And of course, we want the wins for the Constitution. That's the biggest part of this. We want our Constitution restored because the left has done everything in their power to tear it down, and they've done it for so long. It's mind-boggling. And Vince, I got to say, I'm starting to see a little bit of a ray of sunlight coming through for people who love America and really care about the world at large.
I'm with you on having at least a little bit of optimism here. And I agree. It is perfectly fine to disagree with someone. That's one of the things that makes our country great. But at the same time, I'm very concerned that Justice Barrett couldn't see with clear eyes the threat to the First Amendment that the White House poses, any White House for that matter. But the way the Biden administration has used the social media companies to censor American citizens, it is grotesque. And she was on the wrong side in that decision. That's just my opinion. I disagree with her. Thank you, Donna. Really appreciate you. Oh, let's go to the phones. I've got Stephanie calling in from Leesburg. She's on line 1. Hello, Stephanie.
For 90 years now, the veto.
Stephanie.
Hello.
Hey there, Stephanie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. What's on your mind?
Hi, so I am younger, and I have a lot of friends and family who I'm always encouraging to get out there and vote. And a lot of them are just like, nah, it's rigged. What are some tips? What are some things I could say to change their mind? Because, this election, we have a lot riding on it. And I'm just not a really good debater. I mean, I listen to your show every day. You guys have definitely given me a lot of knowledge. But I just don't know how, a good way to get them to
approach it,
get out there and vote.
So let's start with the basic assumption that's built into their views. They love this country, right? These are people who love our country.
Yes.
Yes? And they're not planning on going somewhere else. There's no other country they're planning on heading to?
No.
Okay, all right, good.
No,
So I just wanted to get the basics. All right, so here's the thing. If you love our country, the last thing you should do is give up the battlefield. That's the absolute last thing you should do. That's giving up. That's throwing in the towel. And they're not quitters, are they?
They're not, and they have a lot of the same views, and they're a very determined group of people. But I feel like, I guess maybe the last elections, they just threw in the towel because they feel like they just don't have a dog in the fight. But I'm just trying to give them some positive feedback.
But they definitely do. So here's some things to give you some optimism. 27 states in the country have banned Zuck bucks. Like some of the concerns about the rigging that existed from that election have definitely changed. A lot of states have actually passed a number of election integrity laws, including in critical states like Georgia, that are improvements for the country. Has every state gotten better? The answer to that is no, they haven't all gotten better. But President Trump has a solution to this, and it's a very simple phrase. Let me play this audio for you. This is President Trump just a few months ago in Richmond, Virginia, which is a battleground state. If your friends live in Virginia, they have to vote. Take a listen to this.
And I will secure our elections. Our goal will be one day voting with paper ballots and voter ID. But until then, Republicans must win. We have to win to get it done. And we want a landslide that is too big to rig. Too big to rig. That's what we need.
The answer for your friends, Stephanie, is stay in the fight. If you love this country, you will. And do what Donald Trump suggests and make it too big to rig. You don't need a lot of arguments for that. That's a very simple thing to understand. And I think if we do that, we can reclaim this country. We can. What's the phrase? Oh, yeah, make America great again. Hey, Stephanie, thank you for the call. Stay in the fight. Keep up the hope. It'll be good. It'll be good. All right, coming up, Mark Hemingway from the Federalist is with us. We'll talk to him about the latest big lie the media has been telling and how some of their guys are now beginning to tell the truth, but why? We'll explore. Hey, good afternoon. It is 5:35 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Kind of an amazing thing going on in the media right now. Up until last Thursday, they kept insisting that Biden is of completely sound mind. Then Thursday night happened, and suddenly they turned on the guy. They say, He's got dementia. How can he continue like this? In fact, today, here's a piece of audio for you just in. CNN's Jake Tapper on television insisting that this is not a one-time thing. Biden, he's really failing.
In an attempt to reassure voters about his fitness for office, Biden campaign chair Jen O'Malley Dillon holding a call with party leaders earlier today, telling them this too shall pass. There is a pattern, discernible pattern, of Democratic officials seemingly trying to convince you, the public, to not believe what you saw and what you heard with your eyes and with your ears on Thursday night.
What I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare, the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
Democratic officials have tried to spin this in many ways. They said President Biden just had a cold. They said it was just one off night, akin to when President Obama in 2012 was rusty and seemed a little huffy. But behind the scenes, make no mistake, most Democratic officials witnessed the same shocking spectacle that you did. The difficulty that the presumptive Democratic nominee, the current president of the United States, had just articulating his basic thoughts during the 90 minutes of the debate.
That was today. What changed? Let's bring in Mark Hemingway now. He's a book editor for The Federalist, and he's got a brand new column out. Democrat media aren't upset Biden is senile. They're mad they can't hide it anymore. Hello, Mark. Great to have you back with us, sir.
Hey, glad to be back on.
Isn't it amazing? I couldn't imagine Jake Tapper doing that segment 2 weeks ago. What happened?
Well, I mean, what's really, shocking here is they're only doing this because it became immediately apparent on Thursday. Not that Biden's senile. We've known that for years. It's been abundantly obvious. It's because they realized she couldn't win. And so the fact that they are doing this now, it's really just sort of shocking. And the lack of shame they have for, turning on a dime here, and acknowledging what, the rest of us with eyes and ears have, known before he ran in 2020. That he was, losing his mind due to age-related, senility issues. It's really just laying bare, the total moral and ethical collapse of journalism, which is, another issue we've known about for a long time. It's just that, they can't hide it from you anymore.
So 2 weeks ago, they started a news cycle where they started declaring any video of Biden failing in public is a cheap fake. That's what the phrase they used for like 8 minutes. The cheap fakes, they said, the White House came up with it. The media carried its water, and they were insisting this. And I remember thinking at the time, I was like, wait a second. All of a sudden, they're obsessed with these videos going around. Mark, you and I have been sharing videos like this for a while, and everybody I know on the right is well aware of this phenomenon. It struck me that the cheap fake news cycle was a product of the left discovering that Biden has dementia.
Exactly. I mean, and as you point out, the cheap fake was actually a talking point that the White House put out, and the media, immediately picked it up and ran with it, which is just, absolutely insane, but it was just over a week between the New York Times went from writing an article about how these videos are deceptively edited and don't believe your eyes, to running an official editorial saying that Biden needed to drop out. I mean, the lack of shame, if they were going to do this, people don't just feel, shocked that Biden is to suddenly discover Biden is senile. They feel betrayed and lied to by these people, and they're not going to acknowledge it for a single second.
No, because that's how they handle every single time that they're caught. They just move on. So what is this at this moment? Is this a play for power? Is that simply how we filter this? That the reason that they're bringing this up is because they genuinely want a new nominee in order to keep power for Democrats?
I'm sure that's exactly what it is. If you're concerned about the fate of the country, and mind you, for some time now, we've had 2 raging wars going on that involve a nuclear power, right? And if you were really concerned about, Biden's mental, state, you would have been, calling for the party to do something about this, months, if not years from now. Even if the Democrats do decide to, try and hot swap a candidate here in the middle of the election, what are the odds they're going to demand that Biden step down immediately? They're going to, they'll insist that Biden serve out his term, even though we all know, he's not capable of, making rational decisions much of the time. I mean, there, leaks to the press recently that Biden is really only good between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Each day. Otherwise, he's just, sundowning, I believe is the term that is often thrown around when you're dealing with age-related mental issues like this. So they're not actually serious about, taking care of, protecting democracy, as it were. They really just don't care. They only care about holding on to power.
It's remarkable. And meanwhile, the decision about whether or not Biden leaves, I saw Axios run a story this weekend, and my eyebrow popped when I saw it. They referred to the close-knit circle of people who will make the decision as the Biden oligarchy. I was like, wow. So Axios, they've gotten to the point now where they're using the phrase oligarchy, which I would argue is the proper way to construe what's going on in Biden world. But here they are. That's the honesty is just breaking out everywhere, Mark.
I mean, there have been all kinds of things, going around to sort of like rationalize and explain this. And the fact that the media are just sort of regurgitating a lot of this sort of uncritically and not, contextualizing this like they manage to do every time the Republicans put excuses out, it really tells you something. I mean, there have been, reports that, Biden had a cold that they repeated, uncritically, and that was why he had a bad debate performance. So he had a cold, but then they took him to a Waffle House at 2 a.m. or whatever after the debate so he could run around shaking people's hands.
Yes.
Well, which is just, absurd. The other thing is that the Biden family has blamed his aides for doing a bad job preparing him for the debate, and that's why this happened. I mean, the fact that this stuff is being, even repeated by the media is, really telling in and of itself. It's just astonishing to me the amount of deference that, even as they're admitting that there's a problem, they're still showing to the guy. It's really something to behold.
So, excuse me, we like kind of mocking the dwindling audiences of these outlets, or certainly, at least I do. But there is something that I've learned from this, which is that these media outlets do genuinely have some sort of hold on the Democrat base. Because if you see the debate, and then now you're looking at some of the polling numbers, Biden is shedding people at a very rapid pace right now. And that the only way to explain that is that they were lulled into some sort of false sense of who Biden was by these very media outlets. How much influence do you think that they have on that base?
Well, I think for, people that are tuned in and are inclined to be, free thinkers or, not, drinking the Kool-Aid, I don't think they have much influence left at all. In fact, I don't think they have a lot of influence left to make, big changes in opinion like perhaps they used to. But, for people that are not heavily engaged, which is, a lot of people. I mean, I don't begrudge people for not making politics a full-time job.
Yeah.
When they have other lives. But for a lot of those people that aren't, tuned in all the time, the fact that the entire media marches in lockstep with Democratic Party talking points, really does manufacture kind of a consensus that I think people sort of loosely go along with until something comes along to shatter that illusion. And we saw that throughout the Trump presidency and all kinds of things. I mean, the Russia, hoax stuff. I mean, it's just absolutely astonishing. That was the major news story for 2.5 years of Trump's presidency, and absolutely defined it. And it turned out to be completely based on nothing.
Yeah.
And it was obvious to a lot of us that it was based on nothing all along. But they were, the media still had enough clout that they were able to push that out there that the average person just knew that, Trump was somehow, engaged with taking bribes from Russia or something, or, colluding with Russia to steal an election. So they have enough of an influence around the margins, I think, to really, impact an election, and they know that. And so that's why, they've hung on to this sort of, desire to, tell the Democratic Party what to do as much as possible. And if anything, what's interesting right now is the fact you have the New York Times and the New Yorker writing editorials telling Biden to drop out of the race. I literally cannot remember the last time when elite, or elitist journalism outlets like this were at odds with the leaders of the Democratic Party. Like, I just can't think of it. It just doesn't happen. So the fact that this is happening now is really kind of the exception that proves the rule.
Yeah, no, they're always kind of a symphony. They work to support each other. So can you, having been in and around the media, Mark Hemingway, for so long, what is your view in terms of how these things transpire? So on Thursday night, immediately after the debate, I could have interchanged any number of segments from MSNBC and CNN. It was all the same basic talking point. This is horrifying. I'm receiving calls from Democrats. He needs to step down. We need to have a serious conversation about replacing him. That was the whole night after the debate last night. So when you see that everybody turns on a dime at the same moment in the left-wing media, to what extent do we attribute that to a coordinated messaging campaign, or how much of this is just instinct, where they know, wait a second, this is bad for us, and they just kind of know instinctively how to navigate it to benefit Democrat power?
Well, in some cases, it really is, I think, directly coordinated. Like, for instance, I saw Jen Psaki, who works for MSNBC, on MSNBC right after the debate was over, literally asking Gavin Newsom, who is Biden's official surrogate, what talking points should be put out there to show that, Trump had a bad debate. That's literally how she phrased it.
That was on the air? She said that?
Oh, yeah.
That's hilarious.
She used the phrase talking points, but she said something to the effect of, what would people with the social media, platforms be saying right now about how badly Trump did? Yeah, so you have a situation here where you have Jen Psaki, who went straight from being the press secretary for the current president of the United States to go working for a major journalism network with no particular objection from her peers about that, asking Biden's official surrogate for what talking points to put out. And that is the state of modern journalism right now, and nobody seems to care at all about that. So you do have situations where obviously they're taking literal White House talking points. The Chief Fake things we've already discussed was literally a White House talking point, yes, and everyone in the media ran with it. But a lot of it is honestly just, as you described, a conspiracy of intuition. Everybody in the media is of a hive mind because they're all from the same socioeconomic background. They share exactly the same, center-left to progressive politics, and agree that Republicans are evil and that they have a civic obligation as journalists to stop Republicans from holding office. I mean, that's literally what it boils down to. Yep. The media's made all this stuff about the importance of, made a lot of hay about the importance of diversity, but they've made zero, they've made zero effort to increase diversity of thought in their own newsroom. Walk in the Washington Post newsroom and find out, how many people there own a gun or go to a church service on a weekend, and you'll quickly find that there's literally no diversity in that newsroom.
Yeah. Just walk in and call Caitlyn Jenner a dude and see what happens. Just try it out.
Exactly.
Thank you. Mark Hemingway, really appreciate your time and your wisdom as always, sir. Good to talk to you today. Jake Tapper turning over a new leaf today, at least for now. He might flip the leaf back over. Here he is talking to Democrat Chris Coons, Joe Biden's national co-chair. Today. This is today. Listen.
I mean, he has given fewer press conferences, fewer interviews than any president in modern history,
what is he, like a Fox
including
News
the
host?
Previous one, who's now running for re-election. And, this could all be...
And the previous one told more lies per sentence than any candidate has ever told on a debate stage.
This is not the discussion that we're having. We could certainly, have that conversation. I certainly didn't particularly care for it when President Biden said no U.S. service members had been killed in the previous 4 years. But moving on from things that were said that were not true, I think it is easy to settle this right now by President Biden going to the Brady Press Center, the press file in the White House.
We can do it.
And doing a 2-hour press conference.
Yes.
Everybody would cover.
I thought, by the way, that was going to be their strategy. Like, put him out in front of more people and just have him do more live events. Convince everyone that he's fine. They're not. They're hiding him. There was a big Supreme Court decision today. Biden hasn't stepped in front of a microphone to talk about it. They do not want him in public.
Cover it live. Networks probably would cover it live. He'd answer all these questions. It's not a crazy thing to expect a president to do. And the fact is, you know that. The campaign knows that. The White House knows that. That's how you settle this. You just put him in front of reporters, and he handles himself with acuity, aplomb. We all see it was just a fluke. Oh, my God, I can't believe it happened, and we move on. The fact that you haven't done that says quite a bit to me.
Jake, what I've just said maybe 3 times in this interview is that is what I am urging and recommending.
Chris Coons is running away now from the Biden campaign. I've been telling them they should do that. They're not listening to me. Don't blame me for this. How about that? So now you have your campaign co-chairman going on national television. Didn't expect that from Jake Tapper. Tapper straight up says he lied about troops who died on his watch. How about that? You want to talk about lies? That happened in front of me on that debate stage. Hey, when is he actually going to do a press conference to convince us that his brain operates as intended? And Chris Coons, not even trying to spin. He just was like, I keep telling them to do it, but they're not doing it. This is a disaster. This is a total disaster for them. And it couldn't happen to a better group of people, honestly. It's exactly what they deserve. Exactly. And Tapper, it's like, Tapper, you just discovering this, Jake? We'll see if it holds. You know? Next week, he'll be back to telling us about the cheap fakes. We will see. Hey, for those of you who stuck with me for 6 hours today, God bless you for that. It was a long haul. Great to have you with us here on this great station, WMAL. Up next, the great one, Mark Levin.